Imagine standing in the grand foyer of a sprawling Pennsylvania estate, the air heavy with the scent of roses and ambition, as your own mother hands you a tarnished costume necklace and whispers, "You're not family, Clara. You're just here to blend in." That moment hit Major General Clara Hensley like a grenade. At 38, a decorated officer who'd faced fire in Iraq, she stood frozen, the cheap jewelry dangling from her fingers, her mother's words slicing deeper than any shrapnel. Margaret Hensley, a titan of Philadelphia's elite, didn't know her daughter secretly owned the very mansion they stood in, nor that Clara was a two-star general who'd shaped national security. This wasn't just a slight, it was a declaration of erasure. But Clara, forged in battle, felt a spark ignite. She wouldn't be invisible anymore. Hey friends, if that moment tugs at your heart, hit that like button, drop a comment about a time you felt unseen, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe, we're just getting started. The chandelier above glittered like a frozen waterfall, casting light across the marble floors where Clara stood, clutching the necklace. It was the eve of her brother Theo's engagement gala, a lavish affair orchestrated by Margaret to cement their family's status. Clara had driven through the rolling hills of Bryn Mawr, her jeep humming over roads lined with ancient oaks, their leaves ablaze in autumn's fire. After years in the Pentagon's sterile halls and the scorching sands of Iraq, this world of manicured lawns and whispered power deals felt alien. The Hensley estate loomed ahead, its Georgian columns pristine, its wrought iron gates a barrier between her past and present. Clara parked, her breath steadying in the silence of her jeep. She'd known returning home would be a minefield, but nothing prepared her for the foyer's chill. Margaret emerged from the parlor, her silk gown rustling, a glass of Pinot Grigio in hand. Beside her was a woman in a sharp blazer, likely the event planner. Margaret's eyes, green like Clara's but icier, scanned her daughter's simple slacks and sweater. "Clara, your room's upstairs near the attic," she said, her voice a performance for the planner. "Grab your own linens." She turned away, dismissing Clara like a stranger. The gala unfolded like a chess game, Margaret moving among Philadelphia's elite, senators, CEOs, philanthropists, her laughter a calculated melody. Clara tried to mingle, but each conversation felt like navigating a foreign dialect. Then Margaret approached, her smile ablaze, and pressed the necklace into Clara's hand. "Clara, darling," she said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear, "why don't you help with the guest book? You're so good at staying out of the way." The words landed like a slap. Pinkerton, guests chuckling politely. Theo, chatting with a congressman, glanced over and shrugged, complicit in his silence. Shame burned Clara's cheeks, reducing her stars to ash. She retreated to the kitchen, the hum of the party fading. Under the fluorescent glare, she unclasped the necklace, its fake gems mocking her. She let it fall into a trash bin, a quiet vow. This was war. The necklace wasn't just a trinket. It was Margaret's attempt to rewrite Clara's story, to make her a prop in a world that revered sparkle over substance. But Clara had a secret. The deed to this house, her father's legacy, was in her name, secured through a trust she'd uncovered after a cryptic tip from an old family friend. Margaret's empire was built on sand, and Clara held the tide. That night, in a guest room smelling of dust and neglect, Clara lay awake. The memory of the necklace in the trash looped in her mind, sharp and unrelenting. Why did Margaret despise her so? Why did her mother see her service as a stain rather than a star? The answer lay buried in the past, in the shadow of her father, Colonel Amos Hensley, who'd seen her strength when Margaret saw only flaws. Clara knew where she needed to go for clarity, not to a therapist, but to a battlefield of memory where her father's lessons waited. As dawn painted the sky, she slipped into her jeep, the engine's roar a promise of answers yet to come. The mist hung low over Gettysburg National Cemetery, softening the rows of white headstones into ghosts of sacrifice. Clara Hensley stood before her father's marker, Colonel Amos Hensley, the dawn air sharp with the scent of wet grass and history. Her breath clouded as she traced the carved letters, each one a tether to the man who'd seen her when no one else did. Last night's humiliation, the costume necklace, her mother's venomous dismissal, still burned, but here in this sacred silence, Clara felt a spark of clarity. Amos had taught her to navigate by the dim stars, the ones you strained to see, and now, with her mother's empire looming, she needed his map more than ever. A cryptic note tucked in her pocket, found in her father's old journal, hinted at a betrayal tied to the family estate, a secret that could shift the battlefield. Clara's boots crunched on the gravel path as she approached the grave, the weight of the previous night heavy on her shoulders. The Bryn Mawr mansion, with its glittering chandeliers and Margaret's calculated cruelty, felt a world away. At 38, Clara was no stranger to war. Her years in Iraq had honed her instincts, her 2 stars earned through grit and loss, but this fight was personal. Margaret's attempt to erase her, to reduce a major general to a servant, wasn't just a slight. It was a campaign to steal her father's legacy. The necklace, now buried in a kitchen trash bin, was the opening salvo. Clara's response would be surgical. She knelt, her fingers brushing the cold marble. "Dad," she whispered, "I'm in the dark, but I'm not lost." Memories flooded back. Nights on their old porch, Amos pointing to the sky, his voice steady as he traced constellations. "Margaret chases the bright stars, Clara," he'd said, his eyes warm with pride. "They dazzle but they blind. The dim ones, the ones you fight to see, those guide you home." He'd known her mother's hunger for status, her disdain for Clara's choice to serve. At 18, when Clara's West Point acceptance arrived, Amos had celebrated with greasy burgers at a roadside diner, his quiet joy louder than Margaret's lavish parties for Theo's minor art awards. That contrast, Amos's belief versus Margaret's rejection, had shaped Clara's path. The note in her pocket, discovered in Amos's journal after a tip from a family friend, was a puzzle piece. Scrawled in his precise hand it read, "Trust deed 1998 hidden in safe." Margaret's blind spot. Clara's heart raced. She owned the estate, but this hinted at something deeper, perhaps a legal maneuver Margaret had planned to seize control. The thought sent a chill through her, sharper than the morning air. If Margaret was plotting to rewrite the family's legacy, Clara needed more than resolve. She needed allies and evidence. The cemetery's silence, unlike the weaponized quiet of her mother's home, felt like a call to arms, urging her to fight not with anger but with truth. As she placed a challenge coin on the headstone, its soft clink echoed like a vow. Clara stood, her jaw set, the mist parting as the first rays of sun broke through. She wasn't just a soldier. She was Amos's daughter, a dim star ready to burn bright. Driving away from Gettysburg, her jeep's hum a steady pulse. She felt the shift. The note was a lead, but the real fight lay ahead. Back in Philadelphia, where Margaret's Gala was a stage for lies. Clara's next move would be to find someone who knew her mother's game, someone who could decode the note's meaning. As the battlefield faded in her rear view, a name surfaced from her father's old stories. Dr. Evelyn Porter, a retired intelligence analyst who'd crossed paths with Margaret. Clara's mission was clear: find Evelyn, uncover the truth, and turn the tide. The hum of Philadelphia's city lights faded as Clara Hensley pulled into a quiet alley, her jeep's tires whispering against the cobblestones. A nondescript brownstone loomed ahead, its plaque reading Porter Consulting. Inside, Dr. Evelyn Porter, a retired intelligence analyst with sharp gray eyes and a reputation for unraveling secrets, waited. Clara's heart still carried the weight of Gettysburg, her father's grave, his cryptic note about a hidden trust deed, and the sting of her mother Margaret's dismissal at the Gala. The costume necklace, now a symbol of her erasure, had ignited a fire, but Clara knew she couldn't fight alone. The note hinted at Margaret's plan to seize the family estate, and Evelyn was the key to decoding it. As Clara stepped through the door, a new alliance was forming, one that could turn her mother's empire to dust. Evelyn's office was no therapist's haven. It was a command center, walls lined with maps of global conflicts and a whiteboard scrawled with cryptic timelines. "Clara Hensley," Evelyn said, her voice warm but laced with steel, "Amos's daughter. I've been expecting you." Clara's breath caught. Evelyn had known her father, had clashed with Margaret on charity boards for decades. Over steaming mugs of black coffee, Evelyn cut to the chase. "Your mother's not just sidelining you," she said, sliding a file across the desk. "She's waging a campaign to erase your claim to Amos's legacy. That trust deed? It's your weapon, but she's got lawyers circling." The file contained emails, snippets of Margaret's deals, suggesting she'd buried documents to undermine Clara's ownership of the estate. Clara's pulse quickened. This wasn't just personal, it was strategic, a chess game where Margaret held the board. But then another figure stepped into the room. Captain Nora Caldwell, Theo's fiancée, her posture unmistakably military despite her casual sweater. "General," Nora said, her voice steady, "I owe you my life." Clara froze. Nora had served under her in Iraq, saved during a brutal ambush in Anbar province. "I ran a check on you after Theo's boasting," Nora admitted. "I know who you are. Margaret's wrong about you and I'm not part of her game." Her eyes burned with loyalty, a soldier's bond forged in fire. Clara felt a warmth she hadn't known she craved, a crack in her isolation. The three women, Clara, Evelyn, and Nora, sat around a table, maps and files spread before them like a war council. Evelyn pulled out a tiny recorder and an encrypted USB drive. "Margaret thrives on whispers and lies," she said. "Record everything. Build a case." Nora, leveraging her access to Theo's inner circle, offered to pull schematics of the Gala venue, a historic Philadelphia hotel where the engagement party would double as Margaret's stage. Clara shared her ground truth. Margaret's decades of slights, from dismissing her West Point acceptance to throwing lavish parties for Theo's trivial wins. Each memory was a data point, a piece of the enemy's profile. As they plotted, the room buzzed with purpose. Nora mapped out the Gala's security, pinpointing blind spots in the camera grid. Evelyn listed key guests, journalists, influencers, power brokers, who could amplify their strike. Clara's mind sharpened, her general's instincts kicking in. This wasn't just about the estate. It was about reclaiming her father's vision, his belief in service over status. The note from Amos's journal, now tucked in Evelyn's safe for analysis, was their first clue, but they needed more, proof of Margaret's legal maneuvers, a smoking gun to expose her. As Clara left the brownstone, the city's pulse felt alive, syncing with her own. She wasn't alone anymore. The dim star her father spoke of was joining a constellation, and the Gala loomed like a battlefield where truth would be their weapon. The air in Philadelphia's Bellevue Hotel shimmered with wealth, crystal flutes clinking as the city's elite swirled through a gala that was more chessboard than celebration. Clara Hensley, her heart still echoing with her father's words from Gettysburg and the resolve forged with allies Evelyn Porter and Nora Caldwell, stepped into the lion's den. Margaret Hensley, her mother, had invited her to a private dinner just days before Theo's engagement gala, a move Clara's instincts screamed was a trap. The cryptic note from her father's journal, Trust Deed 1998, hidden in safe, burned in her mind, hinting at Margaret's scheme to steal the family estate. As Clara slipped a tiny recorder into her clutch, she wasn't just a daughter meeting her mother. She was a general entering hostile territory, ready to turn Margaret's game against her. The restaurant, a gilded haven of velvet drapes and candlelight, was a stage for Margaret's performance. She sat regal in a sapphire gown, her smile as polished as the silverware. "Clara, you look presentable," she said, her eyes flicking over Clara's understated black dress, a barb wrapped in silk. The meal unfolded like a ballet of deception, foie gras paired with Margaret's tales of family unity, each word dripping with practiced warmth. Clara's recorder hummed silently, capturing every syllable. She listened, her face a mask of calm as Margaret spun stories of Clara's childhood, cherry-picking moments that felt stolen from another life. The room's opulence pressed against Clara, the clatter of forks a reminder of the stakes. Margaret wasn't just rewriting history, she was erasing Clara's place in it. Then came the strike. As a delicate lavender sorbet arrived, Margaret slid a sleek folder across the table, her fingers brushing it with casual menace. "Just a formality, dear," she cooed, her voice low, conspiratorial. "A way to streamline the family assets for Theo's future. Sign here." Clara's pulse thundered, the note from Amos flashing in her mind. She opened the folder, scanning the dense legal text. Phrases leapt out: relinquish all rights, irrevocable transfer. This wasn't streamlining, it was theft, a bid to strip Clara of the estate, her father's legacy. Evelyn's warning echoed: never sign without a lawyer. Clara's hand steadied, her training kicking in. She closed the folder, sliding it back with a deliberate smile. "I'll need my attorney to review this, Mother." The effect was electric. Margaret's smile froze, then shattered, her eyes narrowing to slits of ice. "A lawyer," she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper that cut through the restaurant's hum. "We're family, Claire. Don't you trust me?" The words were a masterstroke of manipulation, leveraging a bond-appointed bond Clara had long outgrown. It's a simple matter, Margaret pressed, her manicured nails tapping the folder. Don't make this difficult. Clara stood, her movements slow, deliberate. She placed a crisp $100 bill on the table, covering her share and more. My lawyer will return it once it's vetted, she said, her voice smooth as steel. Turning, she walked out, the weight of Margaret's stare boring into her back. The room seemed to hold its breath, but Clara didn't look back. She dodged the ambush, but the war was far from over. Outside, the night air was crisp, the city's pulse alive with possibility. Clara's phone buzzed. A secure message to Evelyn containing photos of the documents, already uploaded to their encrypted drive. As she drove back to her sparse apartment, the recorder's weight in her clutch felt like a grenade, primed to detonate Margaret's lies. Evelyn's call came hours later, her voice taut with fury. It's a full waiver of your inheritance, Clara. She meant to take everything. The words landed like a punch, but Clara was ready. Margaret had underestimated her, thinking her a pawn. But Clara was a general, and the Gala loomed as her battlefield, where Nora and Evelyn's plan would turn the tide with devastating precision. The Bellevue Hotel's grand ballroom pulsed with the glamour of Philadelphia's elite, chandeliers casting a golden glow over silk gowns and tailored suits. Clara Hensley stood at the threshold, her heart a steady drumbeat, her class a uniform pristine, its 2 silver stars gleaming like beacons. The engagement gala for her brother Theo and Captain Nora Caldwell was Margaret Hensley's stage, a meticulously curated display of power. But Clara, armed with her father's wisdom, Evelyn Porter's strategy and Nora's loyalty, was ready to turn it into a battlefield. The cryptic note from Amos's journal had led to a devastating truth: Margaret's legal ambush to steal the estate. Now, with a dossier of evidence and a plan honed in Evelyn's war room, Clara was here to unveil the truth. As the oak doors swung open, every eye turned, and the air crackled with the promise of a reckoning. The string quartet's notes faltered, a single cello string humming into silence. Clara's boots clicked down the aisle, her decorations, Silver Star, Purple Heart, Legion of Merit, vibrant against the deep blue of her uniform. Margaret, seated in the front row, froze, her regal smile collapsing into a mask of dread. Theo's confident posture crumbled, his jaw slack with panic. Clara didn't pause. She took a seat in the last row, a silent sentinel, her presence a challenge to the lies woven into this celebration. The ceremony staggered forward, the officiant's voice shaky as he rushed through the proceedings. Whispers rippled through the 300 guests, senators, influencers, journalists, each glance at Clara a spark in a powder keg. Then came the moment. As Margaret rose to deliver her polished speech, Nora, radiant in her white gown, moved first. She stepped to the microphone, her soldier's posture cutting through the bridal softness. Turning to the back row, she locked eyes with Clara. "Before I begin this new chapter," Nora said, her voice clear and amplified, "I honor the woman who gave me this life." She snapped to attention, her hand rising in a crisp salute. "To Major General Clara Hensley." The ballroom gasped, the title a thunderclap. "This woman saved my life and 5 others in Anbar province during Operation Iron Dawn." Margaret's face contorted, a silent scream trapped in her throat. At that instant, the massive screen behind the altar flickered. The elegant monogram of Theo and Nora vanished, replaced by the unredacted after-action report of Operation Iron Dawn, Clara's name and rank bolded. Photos followed, Clara in the field, dust-streaked and resolute, accepting her silver star, leading her unit through chaos. Then a video. General Roland Pierce, a 4-star Pentagon legend, his stern face filling the screen. In his Class A uniform, he confirmed Clara's service, her decorations, her heroism, his voice a hammer striking doubt to pieces. Simultaneously, phones buzzed across the room. Evelyn's dossier, sent to every journalist present, bursting with evidence of Margaret's lies, from forged documents to the malicious blog post that painted Clara as unstable. Margaret leapt to her feet, her composure shattered. "This is a lie," she shrieked, her voice raw, slicing through the stunned silence. She lunged for the stage, desperate to stop the truth, but it was too late. A single clap broke the quiet, then another, swelling into a tidal wave of applause. The guests rose, not for the couple but for Clara, the soldier in the back row. Their ovation shook the chandeliers, a roar of recognition for a hero unseen until now. Clara sat still, her heart steady, letting the sound wash over her. Margaret's empire was cracking and Nora's salute had lit the fuse. As the applause faded, Clara slipped out, the chaos of Margaret's unraveling behind her. The gala was no longer a celebration. It was a battlefield, and Clara had just won the first strike, setting the stage for a collapse that would echo far beyond this night. The morning sun spilled over Philadelphia, but in the Hensley mansion, darkness reigned. Clara Hensley sat in a quiet cafe, the aroma of espresso grounding her as her phone buzzed with notifications. The Bellevue Hotel Gala, where Nora's salute and Evelyn's dossier had exposed Margaret's lies, was now a smoldering ruin in the headlines. The Philadelphia Inquirer's front page blared. The hidden general. Pentagon confirms heroism buried by family. Clara's name, her silver star, her leadership in Iraq, once erased by her mother, now shown in stark print. Margaret's empire, built on social clout and manipulation, was crumbling and the city's elite were turning their backs. As Clara sipped her coffee, the weight of her victory settled, but a new question loomed. What would become of the family she'd fought to reclaim? The night before, as Clara slipped out of the ballroom amid the thunderous applause, the fallout had begun. Margaret's shriek, "This is a lie," echoed in Clara's mind, a desperate cry drowned by the truth. The dossier, meticulously compiled by Evelyn, had gone viral, its contents, legal documents, recorded conversations, and the malicious blog post branding Clara as unstable, shared across social media. Journalists, primed by Evelyn's contacts, tore into Margaret's narrative. The blog, once a dagger aimed at Clara's reputation, was now a case study in deceit, its anonymous source traced to Margaret's inner circle. By dawn, the story had spread to national outlets, each headline a nail in the coffin of Margaret's influence. Clara scrolled through her phone, the cafe's hum a soft backdrop. Charity boards, where Margaret had reigned as a queen, issued quiet statements requesting her resignation. Invitations to exclusive galas, her lifeblood, dried up overnight. A text from Nora pinged, returned Theo's ring, left it on the hotel suite table. "I'm free." Clara's lips curved in a bittersweet smile. Nora, her ally and a soldier who'd seen her truth, had walked away from Theo's world, choosing loyalty over a gilded cage. The engagement was off, the gala's wreckage a symbol of Margaret's fall. Clara felt no glee, only a hollow clarity. She'd wanted justice, not destruction, but Margaret had built her empire on sand. Back at the mansion, Margaret was unraveling. Clara imagined her pacing the marble foyer, her silk gowns useless against the tide of disgrace. Friends who once flocked to her parties now dodged her calls, their loyalty as shallow as her values. A leaked email, part of Evelyn's dossier, revealed Margaret's attempt to bribe a lawyer to bury Clara's claim to the estate, tying it to the cryptic note in Amos's journal. The trust deed, secured in 1998, was Clara's shield, and Margaret's failure to seize it was her undoing. Clara's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. This wasn't just about the house, it was about her father's legacy, a beacon of service Margaret had tried to snuff out. Yet as the news cycle roared, Clara felt a tug of unease. The victory was public, but personal wounds lingered. Theo, her brother, hadn't reached out, his silence a wound deeper than Margaret's venom. Clara knew the next move wasn't hers alone. Evelyn had texted, "We've got more on the trust deed. Meet tomorrow." The fight wasn't over. Margaret's collapse was a battle won, but the war for Amos's legacy needed a final stroke. Clara closed her phone, her gaze drifting to the cafe's window where the city pulsed with life. She was no longer invisible, but the cost was a family fractured beyond repair. As she stood to leave, her resolve hardened. She'd turn her father's house into something greater, a monument to his dim star, guiding her toward a purpose that outshone Margaret's ruin. The Philadelphia skyline glittered beyond Clara Hensley's apartment window, a quiet contrast to the storm that had just broken Margaret's empire. The cafe headlines still echoed. The hidden general story had stripped her mother's social throne bare. But Clara's focus was sharper now, honed by the victory at the gala and the cryptic note from her father, Colonel Amos Hensley, that had set it all in motion. The trust deed, securing her ownership of the family estate, was safe, but Clara didn't want vengeance. She wanted justice. As she sat with a steaming mug of tea, a call from Evelyn Porter confirmed their next move: transform the mansion, Margaret's stage of lies, into a legacy of service. But a new revelation: A hidden clause in the deed threatened to upend everything, pulling Clara back into the fight with a stakes-raising twist. Evelyn's war room in the Alexandria brownstone buzzed with purpose. Clara, Nora Caldwell, and Evelyn pored over the trust deed, its faded ink revealing Amos's foresight. The clause, buried in legal jargon, allowed Margaret to contest ownership if Clara failed to maintain the property's intended purpose. Margaret's lawyers, scenting blood, were already moving, claiming the mansion was meant for family unity, not charity. Clara's jaw tightened. Margaret was clawing back even in defeat. "She's desperate," Evelyn said, her gray eyes narrowing. "But we've got the upper hand." Their plan was bold. Turn the estate into the Colonel Amos Hensley Legacy Fund, a charitable trust for scholarships for children of fallen soldiers, forcing Margaret to fund it through rent. Clara's lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Diane Voss, drafted the notice with surgical precision. It wasn't an eviction. That would be petty, and Clara was no petty soldier. Instead, Margaret would pay market-rate rent for the Bryn Mawr mansion, a steep sum wired directly to the fund. Each payment would be a reminder of her failure, turning her palace into a monument to Amos's values: service, sacrifice, honor. Clara imagined Margaret signing the checks, her manicured hands trembling, her pride a prisoner in the home she'd once ruled. The notice was sent, and within hours, Diane confirmed receipt. Margaret had no choice but to comply or face legal ruin. The weight of this act settled over Clara like a warm blanket. She stood in her apartment, the city's pulse a steady hum outside. The mansion, once a stage for Margaret's galas, would now educate children like those Clara had seen in Iraq. Orphans of war, their dreams fragile but fierce. She thought of Amos, his quiet pride at her West Point acceptance, his diner burgers a louder celebration than Margaret's lavish parties for Theo. This fund was his dim star shining through her. But the clause lingered, a shadow. If Margaret's lawyers twisted it, the estate could still slip away. Nora, ever the soldier, had an idea: leak the fund's creation to the press. Make it untouchable. Evelyn nodded, already drafting a release. Clara's phone pinged, a text from Diane: "Margaret's team is scrambling. They know the fund's a PR nightmare for them." The public, still buzzing from the gala's fallout, would rally behind a cause tied to fallen heroes. Clara felt the tide turning, but her heart ached for Theo. His silence since the gala was a wound, his complicity a betrayal she hadn't yet faced. She pushed it aside, focusing on the mission. The fund wasn't just a legacy. It was a shield protecting her father's memory from Margaret's grasp. As Clara prepared for the next battle, likely a courtroom clash, she felt Amos's presence, his voice guiding her. "Be constant, Clara." The mansion was no longer a home. It was a battlefield, and Clara was ready to defend it, her resolve a light piercing the gathering storm. The sun hung low over Annapolis, casting a golden sheen across the United States Naval Academy's parade grounds, where Clara Hensley stood at a podium, her class a uniform crisp, her 2 silver stars catching the light. Months had passed since the gala's seismic fallout, since Margaret's empire crumbled and the Colonel Amos Hensley Legacy Fund transformed the family mansion into a beacon of service. The trust deed's hidden clause, a lingering threat from Margaret's lawyers, had been neutralized by public support for the fund, but Clara's journey wasn't over. Invited to speak at the Academy's graduation, she faced a sea of cadets, their gray uniforms a mirror of her own past. As she prepared to share her truth, a quiet email from a scholarship recipient named Emily waited in her inbox, promising a moment that would redefine her legacy. Clara's boots echoed as she approached the podium, the cadets' eager faces a canvas of hope and duty. She could have spoken of battlefield tactics or Iraq's dust-choked ambushes, but instead she chose a harder truth. "You're trained for war," she began, her voice steady, warm, like a friend sharing a secret by a campfire. "But the toughest battles aren't always on foreign soil. Sometimes they're in your own home, where the people who should love you try to dim your light." She told them of her fight, Margaret's erasure, the necklace, the gala's reckoning, not for pity but to map a path. "Honor isn't just a medal," she said. "It's the boundary you draw to protect your soul." The cadets leaned forward, some nodding, others teary, as Clara gave them her father's stars to navigate by. The applause was thunderous, a wave of respect that carried her back to her DC apartment. There, in the quiet glow of her laptop, Clara opened the email from Solace for Soldiers' Kids, a fund she'd quietly supported for years. A video loaded. Emily, a young woman with bright eyes, stood in a dorm room, a college banner behind her. "Hi," she said, her voice trembling with joy. "My dad was Sergeant Nathan Brooks, killed in Afghanistan. I was told this might reach the donor who funded my scholarship." Her smile wavered, tears gleaming. "My mom works 3 jobs. College was a dream I couldn't touch. But you believed in me. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." The video ended and Clara's cheeks were wet, not with pain, but with a contentment so pure it felt like Amos's hand on her shoulder. She sat back, the Potomac River glinting outside her window. The headlines, the Gala's ovation, Margaret's fall. None matched this. Emily's gratitude was Clara's true inheritance, a dim star guiding someone home, just as Amos had taught her. The fund, now thriving, was untouchable, Margaret's legal ploys buried under waves of public support. Theo's silence lingered, a scar, but Clara no longer needed his approval. She'd found her constellation, Evelyn, Nora, Emily, and a purpose that outshone her mother's lies. As she closed her laptop, Clara knew her fight was over, not because the war was won, but because she'd found peace in her own arena. Clara's story settled into a gentle rhythm, like the Potomac's steady flow. The mansion, once a cage of lies, now funded dreams for children like Emily, each scholarship a spark of Amos's legacy. Clara walked the city's streets, her uniform traded for jeans, her heart light. She didn't need the world's applause anymore. She'd found it in a single thank you, in the quiet impact of a life changed. Her father's dim star had guided her through the dark, and now she shone for others. Friends, this is what it means to fight for your truth. Not for revenge, but for purpose. If Clara's journey moved you, share your own story in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell to join us for more tales of resilience. You're not alone in your arena. Thank you for listening.